At the edge of the galaxy, where stars grew sparse and darkness stretched for light years, alien scouts moved cautiously through the cold void. Their ships were sleek, designed for speed, sensors sharpened to detect anything unusual. They had traveled hundreds of light years from their home systems, sent by the council of their civilizations. Something had shifted in the energy patterns near the sector's border, and curiosity, tinged with fear, had brought them here. For centuries, tales of humans had drifted across space. Stories told of a small, insignificant planet on the edge of an unremarkable star system. Humans were said to be primitive, barely capable of leaving their planet. Yet some whispers suggested something different, something that made entire civilizations uneasy. Humans, they exist here, one scout whispered to another, though there was no need. Everyone aboard felt the same pulse of tension, the strange itch of uncertainty in their minds. As the scouts neared the coordinates, the instruments on their ships began to behave erratically. The readings were unlike anything they had seen. Energy levels spiked and dropped in impossible patterns, as if the very fabric of physics had been stretched and twisted. The scouts exchanged nervous glances, but fear was not enough to deter them. Orders were clear: observe, report, do not engage. Then it happened. Across the dark stretch of space, a shimmer appeared. At first, it was faint, almost invisible, like a ripple in the air. The scouts' instruments went into overdrive, trying to identify the anomaly. The ripple became a glow, and the glow expanded until it resolved into a single ship, large, angular, and unlike any design the galaxy had seen. The human vessel Decloaked. It did not announce itself. There were no signals, no attempts at communication. The cloak that had hidden it from detection for centuries fell away, and suddenly, the emptiness of space felt heavy. The scout sensors could barely comprehend the vessel's structure. Every panel, every edge, every surface seemed alive, humming with energy that radiated confidence and silent power. In the council halls of the various civilizations, reports from the scouts caused chaos. Councillors argued in heated tones, voices overlapping, plans being formed and discarded within moments. Some called for a strike, fearing the unknown. Others urged diplomacy, claiming the humans might be open to discussion. But the more the vessel was observed, the less any council member felt certain of anything. The ship was not just powerful, it was aware. It was deliberate. And it waited. On board the human vessel, nothing seemed hurried. Crew members moved with calm precision, each action purposeful, each command measured. There was no panic, no agitation, no fear. They observed the galaxy with quiet attention, analyzing every movement of the alien fleets, noting every reaction, every misstep. Outside, millions of kilometers of space separated them from the alien scouts, yet inside the vessel, it felt as if humans had already accounted for every possibility. The alien scouts tried to respond. Lights flickered on their consoles. Alerts blared. Yet, every attempt to measure, scan, or communicate with the human vessel failed. Lasers bounced off imaginary shields, sensors twisted readings into gibberish, and transmissions never reached their destination. A growing realization swept across the scout crews: these humans were not merely advanced. They were beyond comprehension. Fear began to spread. Not the panic of an unprepared race encountering a sudden threat, but the deep, creeping fear that comes from realizing that the rules of the universe might have shifted. Every civilization that had ever tried to categorize humans felt suddenly inadequate. They had dismissed them as primitive, as backward, as inconsequential. And now, a single ship, silent and resolute, had proven them wrong. Across the void, the human vessel glided closer to the scouts, though never aggressively. It moved with purpose, but its path suggested patience. The humans did not attack. They simply appeared, decloaked, and waited. And that waiting was more terrifying than any weapon. The scouts felt it in their bones. The humans were watching, analyzing, and waiting for a moment they alone would choose to act. 4 hours, perhaps days. Time was difficult to measure across the vastness of space. The scouts followed at a cautious distance. They observed the humans' maneuvers, noted the lack of aggression, the eerie calm. Every attempt at understanding the vessel was met with frustration. No readings could penetrate the hull. No scans could map its systems. And yet, the vessel itself seemed to understand them. It shifted in ways that avoided detection. It moved in patterns that anticipated every adjustment the scouts made. It was as if the ship had a mind of its own. Inside the council chambers, debates turned into arguments, and arguments began to fray into fear-driven chaos. The advisors of the council whispered urgently, attempting to propose solutions. "We should flee," one said. "No, we strike before they realize our weakness," another countered. Every civilization felt the same tension, the same rising dread. The humans were not merely in the galaxy, they were now the center of it. And the galaxy understood, even if slowly, that it was unprepared. Meanwhile, the scouts tried to maintain composure. Protocol demanded patience, observation, and caution. But even the most disciplined crews found their hands shaking, their voices cracking, their thoughts faltering. The humans had appeared without warning, without negotiation, without threat. And yet, the presence of the vessel alone had rewritten the rules. On board the human ship, preparations continued. Screens displayed maps of the surrounding star systems. Symbols, patterns, and numbers moved across them faster than any human eye could follow. Crew members exchanged nods, small gestures that conveyed complex instructions. Outside, the alien scouts could see nothing of the humans themselves, only the immense, silent craft. But it was enough. Enough to inspire fear, to inspire awe, and to make the galaxy feel small. From a distance, the scouts watched as one of their own attempted to move closer, perhaps hoping for contact, perhaps testing the vessel's reactions. A pulse of energy shot out from the human ship, not destructive, not aggressive, but enough to stop the alien craft dead in space. Sensors went blank. Engines stalled. Communications vanished. Panic surged through the alien ship as the realization sank in. The humans could manipulate space, energy, and systems with ease, and without malice, they had already shown superiority. Whispers spread from scout to scout, from fleet to fleet, through channels that were supposed to be secure. They are not just advanced, they are something else. Across the galaxy, the same words echoed in different languages, in different tones, with different inflections. But the meaning was the same. Humans were no longer a distant curiosity. Humans were a force that could not be ignored. As night fell on distant planets, leaders convened emergency councils. Holographic images of the human vessel hovered above tables, glowing with energy that defied description. Strategies were discussed, threats assessed, and warnings issued. Yet, every attempt to categorize the humans failed. No models predicted their actions. No intelligence could anticipate their moves. And that failure was terrifying. Back on the scout ships, morale waned. Some crews considered retreat, but the vast emptiness offered no hiding place. Some plotted desperate strikes, but each plan was more uncertain than the last. And everywhere, the humans waited, patient, silent, and unstoppable. The galaxy had heard rumors for centuries that humans were different, but no one truly believed them. Most dismissed the tales as exaggeration, folklore, or propaganda. Yet now, as the human vessel moved with silent authority, the galaxy understood, too late, that every mistake of the past had brought them to this moment. Every act of underestimating humans had built a world unprepared for what had just arrived. In the cold, black emptiness of space, the human ship shone, not with aggression, not with malice, but with certainty. It decloaked, and the galaxy trembled, not from weapons or war, but from the realization that it had made a mistake it could not undo. Every alien race, every council, every scout felt the same unspoken fear. Humans were not here to negotiate. Humans were not here to threaten. They were here, and the galaxy would never be the same again. And so, the first part of this arrival concluded with a single, undeniable truth spreading across the stars. The humans had come, and the galaxy understood, far too late, that its choices had set the stage for its own reckoning. The scouts transmitted frantic reports, but no advice could prepare anyone. The humans moved with patience and precision, a quiet storm approaching, and nothing in the known galaxy could stop it. Silence spread like a shadow across light years, as the galaxy waited for the inevitable. The humans, aboard their vessel, simply observed, and somewhere in the depths of space, every being who had underestimated them felt the weight of centuries of arrogance collapse in an instant. The arrival was complete. The warning, unspoken yet crystal clear, echoed across every star system. Humanity had returned. And the galaxy, for the first time, feared it had waited too long to pay attention. The galaxy held its breath. Following the human vessel had become an obsession for every civilization that dared approach the edge of known space. Fleets moved with caution, sensors scanning, engines humming with tense energy, but no one dared close the distance. Every ship that tried to approach felt the invisible weight of the humans' presence before they even reached firing range. The scouts who first saw the vessel transmitted frantic reports back to their leaders, but the words seemed inadequate to capture the sheer certainty of its power. And still, the humans waited. Aboard the vessel, the humans moved with quiet determination. Each crew member was calm, almost serene, as if they had known this day would come for centuries. Their eyes scanned the holographic displays, tracking the movements of alien ships, predicting their shifts, noting every hesitation and every sudden maneuver. Commands were given softly, efficiently, without urgency, but every action carried purpose. Outside, space seemed to pulse with energy from the vessel itself, subtle yet undeniable, a reminder to the universe that humans had returned not to ask permission, but to reclaim their place. The alien fleets, distant yet desperate, tried to observe, to understand, to predict. Each civilization relied on its own methods. Some used advanced sensors, others employed psychic probes or mathematical algorithms, but everything failed. The human ship adapted, anticipated, and countered before the alien fleets even realized they were being analyzed. It was not aggression, not yet, but an authority that could not be denied. Every system in every alien ship suddenly seemed inadequate, every instrument useless. Nothing in the galaxy had prepared them for this. Inside the council chambers, panic spread like wildfire. Leaders argued endlessly, their voices strained, their eyes darting to holoscreens showing the humans in real time. "We cannot understand them," one counselor said, voice trembling. "They are calculating, observing, always one step ahead. Every fleet we send is already accounted for. Our weapons, our strategies, they are irrelevant." Others tried to remain calm, offering plans that sounded reasonable, but the room was filled with tension so thick it could almost be felt across light years. The humans had not acted, yet fear gripped every mind that had ever thought they were the galaxy's equal. The scouts, meanwhile, watched in silent terror as the human vessel made subtle adjustments. Nothing obvious, nothing aggressive, but every change was calculated. A slight shift in trajectory avoided clusters of asteroids that no one thought could be predicted. Energy signatures emitted from the hull seemed to probe the surrounding fleets, measuring every engine output, every shield frequency, every sensor range. It was intelligence without arrogance, power without cruelty, and it left no doubt. Humans understood the galaxy in ways that no one else could. One scout captain finally broke the silence, whispering, "They are watching us. Not attacking, not responding, just observing. And I fear that whatever they see, they already know everything we are capable of." His crew nodded, eyes wide, but no one dared speak louder. Outside, the human vessel glided through the blackness, a silent predator, a calm storm, a living proof that the galaxy had underestimated its oldest neighbors. Hours turned into days, or perhaps they only felt like days. Time in this dark corner of space had no meaning. The scouts tried to move closer, to communicate, to gauge intent, but every attempt failed. Signals fizzled, data scrambled into incomprehensible codes, instruments overloading with false readings. One fleet commander screamed at his officers, "Why can't we understand them? Why is everything wrong?" The answers did not exist. Nothing had prepared them for a race that had evolved silently, hidden, patient, until the moment it chose to emerge. And yet, there was no overt attack. No ship fired a single shot. There was only observation, only presence, only the humans' quiet patience. That was what terrified the galaxy most. To act recklessly could bring annihilation, to wait could be even worse. The humans had not spoken, but the universe felt their authority, felt the consequences of underestimation, felt the unspoken question, "Are you ready for what comes next?" Back on the human ship, the crew discussed strategy with calm precision. Flashing holograms showed distant star systems, plotted trajectories of alien ships, highlighted potential threats. Yet, there was no hurry, no panic, only awareness. Humans had survived because they had always adapted, because they had always observed, because they had always understood the consequences of every choice. And now, the galaxy itself was under observation. Every misstep, every hesitation, every arrogant move was catalogued. The humans were not cruel, they were meticulous. They were not violent, they were decisive. And they were in control. The alien scouts felt it, even if they did not understand why. Fear became physical. It seeped into the marrow of their bones, twisted their thoughts, made every decision feel heavier than it should. Leaders argued over trivialities, fleets hesitated, alliances wavered. Even those who had once dismissed humanity as primitive could not ignore the truth any longer. Humans were not to be trifled with. Every instinct told them to retreat, yet pride, curiosity, and the stubborn hope that they might understand kept them frozen. One of the scouts attempted a daring move, sending a small probe closer to the human vessel. It should have been routine, simple reconnaissance. Instead, the probe's instruments overloaded almost instantly. The data it transmitted back was garbled, incomprehensible, fragments of numbers and symbols that made no sense. Engineers aboard the scout ship scrambled to interpret it, but the more they tried, the less they understood. Even the smallest attempt to study the humans was punished, not with aggression, but with a precise, almost clinical countermeasure that left no damage yet made a clear statement: humans saw everything. Emotion grew heavier with each passing moment. Panic, curiosity, awe, dread, they all mingled, saturating every ship in the fleets. The humans were not present to fight, they were present to remind the galaxy of its arrogance. They were a mirror, reflecting centuries of underestimation, negligence, and ignorance back to every civilization that had ever doubted them. And the galaxy, for the first time, felt the weight of its choices. On the human vessel, small lights flickered across the control panels, indicating calculations no alien could hope to follow. Crew members moved silently, communicating with subtle gestures, nods, and glances. Outside, space remained dark, indifferent, yet alive with the unspoken tension of observers and observed. The humans were patient, methodical, and unhurried. They had the time, the knowledge, and the control, and the galaxy had none of these. One scout captain whispered to his crew, almost too softly for anyone to hear, "We should have stayed home. We should have left them alone. Every move we made, it brought this upon us." His words were not meant to be heard, but they were true. Across the fleet, that same realization spread like wildfire. The humans were here, watching, learning, calculating. The galaxy had underestimated them. And the cost of that mistake was yet unknown. Days passed, or perhaps it was only hours. The human vessel glided across the void, decloaked, a calm yet terrifying presence. Alien fleets held their positions, unsure whether to flee, attack, or prey. And all the while, humans observed with silent clarity. They had returned not for battle, not yet, but for the galaxy to see them, to feel them, and to understand the consequences of centuries of ignorance. Fear became respect. Respect became dread. Dread became realization. And somewhere, deep in the hearts of every scout, commander, and counselor, a single, undeniable truth took hold. Humans were not just another species in the galaxy. Humans were the reckoning. The observation continued, long into the void, without pause, without aggression, without mercy. Humans watched, and the galaxy watched back, trembling. Every hesitation, every misstep, every sign of weakness was catalogued. Humans were not cruel, but they were just, precise, and inevitable. Every civilization felt it. The humans had returned, and the galaxy was no longer the same. Every heart, every mind, every system waited for the next move, knowing that the smallest error could be fatal. And in that silence, in that tension, the humans remained calm. They had arrived. They had observed. And the galaxy, at last, understood the magnitude of what had returned. The observation was not merely for knowledge, it was a warning, a lesson, a statement. Humanity had returned, and the universe would never underestimate them again. The galaxy waited, tense and silent, as the humans continued their silent observation. No one knew what they intended. No one could guess their plans. Every civilization that had tried to prepare now realized that preparation was futile. The human vessel moved with calm inevitability, gliding through the darkness as if the void itself obeyed its presence. And then, the unthinkable happened. One civilization, fearful and proud, decided to act first. They had sent fleets of starships, thousands of hulls bristling with weapons, all designed to overpower anything the galaxy had ever faced. Commanders gave the order with a mixture of determination and desperation. They believed their weapons, their numbers, and their technology could intimidate the humans, could make them pause, could show the newcomers that the galaxy would not tolerate intrusion. The first salvo was fired. Missiles streaked across the void, Light beams blazed through the black emptiness, and the alien fleets held their breath, waiting for the moment that would prove human vulnerability. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then the impossible revealed itself. Every weapon aimed at the human vessel failed. Missiles slowed, veering off course as if unseen hands guided them away. Lasers bent, splitting and fracturing in mid-space, harmlessly dissipating into the void. The alien commanders shouted in disbelief, sending frantic orders, attempting to redirect fire, to coordinate a new strategy, to salvage the battle before it began. But nothing worked. Every shot, every beam, every attack was neutralized effortlessly, almost casually. From within the human vessel, the response was minimal. A single pulse of energy radiated outward, subtle but undeniable, touching each attacking ship with precision. Engines faltered, shields flickered, weapons overloaded, systems failed. Yet no lives were lost, no ships destroyed. The pulse was a warning, a message, a demonstration of power and control. Alien crews stared in horror as their mighty armada, thought to be unstoppable, became immobilized by a force they could not comprehend. Panic erupted across the fleets. Commanders barked orders, but voices became chaos, instructions conflicted, and fear took over. Even the bravest captains felt their hands shake, their minds racing, their strategies unraveling before the humans had made a single aggressive move. Across the galaxy, observers watched in silence as the reports poured in. Every fleet that engaged the humans had failed. Every attack was rendered useless. The humans had shown, without violence, that they were superior. Inside the human vessel, there was no celebration, no triumph. The crew moved calmly, efficiently, analyzing the reactions of the alien fleets, noting their mistakes, cataloging their fears. Every ship that hesitated, every commander who overestimated their own strength, every fleet that acted out of panic was recorded. Humans did not need to destroy them to assert dominance. Their presence, their calculated response, was enough. And the galaxy felt it in every corner. On distant planets, council halls erupted in alarm. Leaders screamed at one another, pointing at holographic displays showing their fleets immobilized. "We underestimated them," one cried. "We thought they were primitive. We thought they were weak. And now we see the truth." Others attempted to calm the chaos, proposing retreats, negotiations, or even surrender, but the damage was already done. The humans had spoken without words. The galaxy had understood, too late, that its arrogance had been fatal. The alien scouts who had been following the vessel observed the human pulse with a mixture of awe and fear. They had seen the ship's calm control over space before, but now, the full extent of its power was undeniable. Systems failed not through destruction but through precision. It was not an attack, it was a lesson. Every alien crew felt it. The humans did not need to fire a weapon to demonstrate superiority. Every hesitation, every wrong calculation, every display of overconfidence had been punished in the quietest, most terrifying way. Emotions ran high. Desperation, pride, fear, and/or mingled in every command center. The humans' first strike had not been violent, but it had left a wound deeper than any weapon could inflict. It was humiliation, exposure, and revelation all at once. The galaxy realized the truth. Humans were not just advanced, they were inevitable. Their intelligence, strategy, and patience had made them unstoppable even without full engagement. The alien fleets attempted to regroup, to coordinate a new strategy. But every move was anticipated. The human senses, their calculations, their understanding of tactics exceeded anything the galaxy could produce. Fleets that moved quickly found themselves intercepted by invisible forces. Fleets that moved cautiously found their paths blocked, their communications scrambled. Every action, every hesitation, every attempt to resist the humans was met with precise, almost surgical response. On board the human vessel, the crew remained calm. No one shouted. No one panicked. Every gesture, every instruction, every movement was deliberate. The humans understood their place in this moment. They did not need to destroy fleets. They only needed to demonstrate, to show the galaxy that underestimation came at a cost. And the message was clear. Every civilization that had doubted humanity had been shown the consequence of arrogance. In the alien council chambers, fear had turned into desperation. Leaders who once boasted of their fleet's invincibility now questioned their own intelligence, their own judgment, their own courage. Messages flew across light years, pleading for advice, for understanding, for solutions. None existed. The humans had arrived, acted, and proven that preparation, pride, and arrogance were meaningless. Every choice the galaxy had made, every decision to ignore humanity, had brought them to this moment. And there was no undoing it. The first strike, intended to demonstrate control over the situation, had failed spectacularly. The humans had not only survived, they had asserted authority, superiority, and inevitability. Alien crews whispered in fear, and even their most advanced weapons could do nothing. Pride turned into dread, and the realization spread: the humans were not simply another race, they were a reckoning. A few scout ships attempted daring maneuvers, hoping to catch the human vessel off guard, hoping to test its defenses. Each attempt failed. Every calculation was anticipated, every movement countered, every plan rendered useless. Alien captains screamed in frustration as their pride shattered. Some cried silently, others sat frozen in disbelief. Across the galaxy, the same pattern emerged. The humans had struck without violence, and the lesson was seared into the consciousness of every being present: humans were not to be underestimated. And still, the humans did not pursue destruction. They observed. They measured. They demonstrated patience and precision. Every crew member knew their role, every action was calculated, and every movement reinforced the same message: humans were beyond conventional warfare, beyond the arrogance of alien calculations, beyond expectation. The galaxy had never seen anything like this. The fear, the awe, the respect that blossomed in the hearts of alien crews was more potent than any weapon. It was a weapon that could not be countered. By the end of the engagement, fleets that had thought themselves invincible were paralyzed, their ships alive but impotent. Commanders realized, in a moment of bitter clarity, that their arrogance had been their greatest weapon, and it had failed. The humans had struck without striking. They had acted without aggression. And the galaxy understood, with a sinking feeling that could not be ignored, that their choices had led them to this moment. Every hesitation, every overestimation, every dismissal of humanity had brought them to the edge of disaster. The first strike was over. No one died. No ship exploded. Yet every alien present knew they had been defeated in a way that would haunt them forever. The humans had arrived not merely as participants in the galaxy, but as arbiters, observers, and judges. They had not yet attacked, but the potential of their power was clear. And the galaxy, trembling, waited for the next move, knowing that every future action would be measured, anticipated, and controlled by beings they had once believed to be insignificant. And somewhere, within the calm halls of the human vessel, crew members exchanged nods and subtle gestures. No celebration was needed. The lesson had been delivered. The galaxy had learned, too late, that underestimating humans was a mistake that could not be forgiven. The first strike had ended, but the real reckoning had only just begun. The galaxy was in shock. The first strike had failed, not because the humans had fought back aggressively, but because they had shown control so absolute, so precise, that the fleets had been rendered powerless without a single ship being destroyed. News of the failure traveled faster than light, spreading from council to council, fleet to fleet, and world to world. Panic, disbelief, and fear rippled through the civilizations that had long assumed themselves dominant. Yet still, some leaders clung to hope, or perhaps to pride. Some believed that if they acted carefully, with diplomacy, perhaps the humans could still be reasoned with. Messages were sent to the human vessel. Holograms flickered with carefully crafted words of surrender, of negotiation, of peaceful intent. Envoys were dispatched in their fastest ships, bearing gifts, words of humility, offers of alliance, even apologies for centuries of perceived offenses. Every civilization thought that perhaps, after all, they could avoid further humiliation. But the humans did not respond. The silence was more terrifying than any attack. Hours passed, then days, and still, no reply came. The aliens waited, expecting signals, warnings, something, anything, but the humans did not acknowledge them. The vessel glided silently, a shadow across the void, watching, calculating, waiting. Every observer felt the weight of being analyzed, the quiet judgment of a species that had once been ignored and underestimated. Inside the human vessel, the crew did not rush. They observed the fleets with calm precision, noting every detail, every hesitation, every sign of fear. To the humans, the galaxy's panic was predictable, almost natural. They had waited, had hidden, had allowed other species to grow arrogant. Now, centuries of patience had culminated in this moment, and the humans allowed the galaxy to see, to understand, the consequences of its choices. The alien fleets began to grow restless. Some factions urged restraint, arguing that they should wait, that the humans had yet to act aggressively. Others demanded a strike, fearful that any delay would give humanity the advantage. But every discussion was tainted by doubt. Every leader knew, deep down, that the humans had already outmaneuvered them without firing a single shot. The silence of the vessel was a statement more powerful than any weapon, a declaration that humans would act only when necessary, and always decisively. Small skirmishes broke out among the alien fleets themselves, fueled by fear and panic. Ships collided, miscommunications led to minor accidents, and commanders questioned one another's competence. The humans had not moved a finger, yet the galaxy was unraveling in ways that no one could control. Fear had become chaos, and the humans watched it all with quiet, unhurried patience. Councils convened in emergency sessions. Holograms displayed the human vessel, rotating slowly in space, glowing faintly, emanating power and authority. Advisors screamed over one another, proposing plans to break the stalemate, to force the humans to respond. Some suggested surrender, others a coordinated strike of unprecedented scale. The debate grew heated, voices rising, hands shaking. And yet, no one could see a path to success. The humans had shown, without action, that conventional warfare and diplomacy alike were meaningless against them. Alien emissaries approached the humans again, sending delicate messages, pleas, and warnings. They offered treaties, concessions, and even the surrender of entire star systems. And still, there was no reply. Each unanswered message was a hammer blow to the pride of civilizations that had once thought themselves supreme. The silence was more than a refusal, it was a judgment. The humans were telling the galaxy, without words, that arrogance and dismissal carried a cost. And the galaxy, for all its power, had waited too long to learn the lesson. Within the human vessel, officers reviewed each alien message with calm efficiency. Each word, each gesture, each action of the opposing fleets was recorded and analyzed. There was no anger, no desire for revenge, no malice. Humans were patient and methodical, letting the galaxy reveal its own weaknesses, letting it stumble, letting it recognize the consequences of centuries of hubris. Their strategy was not to destroy, but to expose. Their purpose was not punishment, but clarity. Meanwhile, fear spread like wildfire among the alien populations. Soldiers trembled on the bridges of their ships, engineers questioned the integrity of their systems, and leaders realized that their decisions, made over decades of pride and neglect, had brought them to this brink. They had chosen to ignore the humans for centuries, believing them weak, insignificant, unworthy of attention. And now, at the edge of the galaxy, humanity had returned to remind them of the cost of that ignorance. Even allies were divided. Some factions tried to coordinate defenses, but mistrust and fear eroded cooperation. Every misstep, every hesitation, every act of arrogance was noted by the humans. And the vessel continued to glide silently, observing, calculating, and waiting. There was no aggression, but the humans' mere presence had already begun to reshape the galaxy. Alliances shifted, some civilizations reconsidered their loyalty, and every system that had once dismissed humans now felt the shadow of reckoning. In the darkest corners of the galaxy, those who had underestimated humanity whispered to one another. "They are patient, too patient," one said. "They do not need to fight. They only watch, and we are already lost." Across fleets and councils, the same sentiment spread. Fear was no longer a momentary reaction, it had become a constant, gnawing presence in the minds of every alien who dared study the human vessel. The humans themselves remained calm, silent, unhurried. Their strategy required no violence, no emotion, no theatrics. They observed the galaxy's reactions, catalogued every hesitation and every failure, and waited for the exact moment when action, if necessary, would carry maximum impact. They understood that the galaxy's arrogance was its greatest vulnerability, and they let it unravel on its own. Days turned into weeks, yet no human response came. The alien fleets became restless, anxious, and divided. Some began to question their commanders, others doubted their own civilization's survival. The humans did not intervene. They did not act aggressively. And that restraint, that patience, was more terrifying than any weapon. The galaxy realized, slowly and painfully, that humans had all the power, all the knowledge, and all the control. They had shown, without violence, that every choice made in ignorance had consequences. At last, a consensus emerged among the alien fleets. They must wait, must observe, must hope that the humans would act with mercy. But it was too late. The lesson had been delivered. The silence, the calm, the precision of the humans had exposed the arrogance, pride, and misjudgment of civilizations across the galaxy. Every fleet that had believed itself superior now understood the truth. Humanity was no ordinary species. Humanity was inevitability. Inside the vessel, the crew continued their quiet work, their calm unshaken by the chaos around them. The humans were patient. They were methodical. They were precise. They had arrived to remind the galaxy of its mistakes, to observe the consequences of arrogance, and to show, without a single shot fired, that power came not from numbers or weapons, but from discipline, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. And the galaxy, trembling and fractured, began to understand a bitter truth. Every decision made in the past, every act of underestimation, every choice to ignore humanity had led them to this moment. The humans had returned, they had observed, and the warning had been ignored. The consequences would follow, and no civilization, no fleet, no council would ever be able to act without remembering the quiet, unstoppable authority that now watched them from the void. The galaxy's fear had begun to solidify into something heavier, something more tangible than whispers or reports. The humans were no longer an anomaly. They were a presence, a certainty that forced every civilization to question everything they thought they knew. Fleets that had once believed themselves unstoppable now drifted through space like startled prey, their engines humming nervously, their sensors strained to detect the unseen. And the humans, aboard their immense vessel, observed with patience, with precision, with the calm certainty of inevitability. A fleet of moderate size, dispatched by one of the galaxy's most powerful empires, moved to test the humans' patience. Thousands of ships, lined in careful formation, bristling with weapons, shields shimmering with energy, engines pulsing in unison. The commanders, proud and determined, believed they could gauge the humans' capabilities, maybe even provoke a reaction that could be studied and countered. Their captains spoke of courage, of honor, of the duty to show the galaxy that their civilization would not bow. Yet none of these ideals mattered now. As the fleet approached the coordinates of the human vessel, every ship's sensors began to flicker, lights dancing across panels in impossible patterns. Engines shuddered briefly. Systems sent alerts that no one could interpret. The fleet commander frowned, shaking his head. Something is wrong. All readings, everything is wrong, he muttered, but even as he spoke, it was too late. The human vessel moved, not quickly, not aggressively, but with a subtle shift that demonstrated its control over the space around it. And then the first ships began to disappear. One by one, without warning, without explosion, without aggression, the fleet's vessels were rendered immobile. Power systems failed. Communications went dead. Navigation computers blinked and went dark. Ships drifted like ghosts, alive but entirely inert. The crews struggled, attempting to restart engines, to restore systems, to call for assistance, but nothing worked. Their weapons, their shields, their technology, all meant nothing. The humans had touched the fleet without touching it, neutralized it without firing a shot. Fear spread instantly. Even ships not directly affected by the pulse trembled in recognition of what was happening. Crews shouted, engineers cursed, captains screamed into dead channels. Across the galaxy, other fleets received the transmissions, watching in horror as the pride of one empire, one of the largest fleets ever assembled, vanished under the watchful presence of a single human vessel. Panic took root, spreading faster than light, infecting every civilization with a creeping, gnawing dread. Inside the human ship, the crew remained calm, methodical. They did not celebrate. They did not raise alarms. They simply observed, analyzed, recorded. Every hesitation, every misstep, every desperate attempt to regain control by the alien fleet was noted, catalogued, and understood. To the humans, this was not an act of war, it was an act of observation, a lesson in precision, a demonstration of consequences. And yet, to the galaxy, it was terrifying. The fleet commander, trapped aboard his powerless flagship, realized the depth of their failure. We cannot move. We cannot communicate. It's like, the universe itself refuses us, he said, voice trembling. His crew stared at him, wide-eyed, silence falling heavy in the bridge. Every calculation, every strategy, every hope had been rendered meaningless by the humans' patience and foresight. And still, the humans did nothing aggressive, they merely existed, and that existence was more terrifying than any weapon could have been. Across the void, alien fleets attempted to respond. Some hesitated, fearing the same fate. Others tried small strikes, careful maneuvers, probing attacks. But every action was anticipated. Every attempt failed. Every misstep added to the fear that had begun to dominate their minds. Slowly, panic became despair. The humans did not need to attack to prove dominance, they only needed to observe and allow the galaxy to fail itself. On distant worlds, the council chambers were filled with chaos. Holograms showed the immobilized fleet, drifting silently through space, completely neutralized. Advisors screamed at one another, tried to propose solutions, tried to negotiate, tried to comprehend. But there were no solutions. The humans had demonstrated that preparation, arrogance, and pride were powerless against them. The fleets had vanished, not destroyed, but lost. And the message was unmistakable. Humanity had returned not merely as participants in galactic affairs, but as a force beyond reckoning. Soldiers aboard unaffected ships whispered to one another, some praying, some crying, some trying to deny the truth. The humans had not yet attacked aggressively, yet the galaxy felt the weight of their power, the inevitability of their actions, the clarity of their judgment. Fear was no longer hypothetical, it was physical. It filled the hearts and minds of every being who dared observe the human vessel. Inside the vessel, crew members continued their quiet work. Screens displayed star systems, plotted the trajectories of every fleet, recorded reactions, measured responses. The humans understood not only the capabilities of their opponents, but also the psychology, the arrogance, and the fear that had fueled the galaxy's own downfall. This was not war. This was revelation. This was inevitability. Every civilization that had underestimated humanity now faced the consequences of their ignorance. Even allies, those who had once trusted themselves and their fleets, began to hesitate. Coordination faltered. Doubt crept into every strategic plan. Commanders who had once believed in their superiority now questioned whether their civilizations could survive the presence of humanity. And all the while, the humans remained calm, precise, silent. They had not yet destroyed, not yet demanded obedience, not yet engaged in combat. They had merely observed, and the galaxy had unraveled under their scrutiny. Weeks, perhaps months, passed, though time itself seemed distorted in this dark corner of space. The lost fleet remained adrift, a ghostly monument to the humans' power. Messages from the crippled ships described the same reality: systems failing, engines dead, sensors unable to function, communications lost. And the crew who had once been proud, who had once believed in their civilization's strength, now whispered of inevitability, of mistakes too long ignored, of consequences too great to survive. Across every council, across every fleet, across every star system that had once scoffed at humanity, the same realization emerged: humans were no longer to be ignored. Humans were no longer to be underestimated. They were not just advanced, they were inevitability itself, patient, methodical, precise, and unstoppable. And the galaxy had waited far too long to understand it. Inside the vessel, humans exchanged small nods, subtle gestures, quiet acknowledgments of another fleet observed, another lesson delivered. They did not celebrate. They did not speak of triumph. The galaxy had been shown the cost of arrogance, and that was enough. For the humans, this was only the beginning of observation, the first measure of a civilization unprepared for the return of a species they had long dismissed. And the galaxy, trembling, knew in its core that the lost fleet was only the first of many lessons yet to come. And so, in the cold void of space, the humans continued to glide silently, observing, measuring, waiting. The lost fleet, immobilized, powerless, helpless, drifted as a stark reminder to all: the humans had returned. They were patient. They were precise. They were inevitable. And the galaxy, for the first time in its history, feared that nothing could undo the consequences of centuries spent underestimating humanity. The galaxy was beginning to understand a truth it had refused to acknowledge for centuries: humanity's strength was not merely in its weapons, its fleets, or its technology. It was in something far deeper: discipline, strategy, patience, and a will so unwavering that no force could deter it. The Lost Fleet was only the beginning, a warning etched into the minds of every alien civilization that had once considered humans insignificant. Yet even as the fleets trembled and councils dissolved into chaos, the humans aboard their immense vessel moved with calm precision, as if the galaxy itself were a chessboard and every piece had already been anticipated. Inside the human ship, officers monitored systems, observed the remaining alien fleets, and analyzed countless data streams. Each movement, each hesitation of the alien ships, was noted, categorized, and remembered. Humans did not need to strike aggressively to demonstrate power. Their mere presence, their calculation, their patience, conveyed something far more terrifying than death, inevitability. Every alien pilot, every commander, every fleet, sensed it deep within themselves. Humans were not reacting, they were orchestrating. They had returned to a galaxy that had long forgotten them, and now they were revealing the consequences of that forgetfulness. The remaining alien fleets, scattered and disoriented, tried to regroup, but coordination was impossible. Fear had become a tangible presence aboard every ship. Pilots whispered prayers, engineers argued over impossible repairs, and commanders sat frozen, haunted by the realization that no plan could outmaneuver the humans. One fleet admiral, older than most alive in the galaxy, admitted to himself in a whisper, "They are not like anything we have ever faced. We are nothing to them. They are inevitable." His words went unspoken over communications, but they echoed in every corner of the galaxy. Even without firing a single weapon, humans had achieved what no council, no fleet, no alliance could: control over the perception of the galaxy itself. Pride and arrogance were shattered, replaced with fear, awe, and an emerging sense of humility. The humans had returned not to conquer by force, but to show that the true measure of a species was not in the number of ships or the size of its fleets, but in its intellect, patience, and ability to act decisively when the moment demanded it. A small alien ship attempted a reckless approach toward the human vessel, hoping to test its defenses. Its sensors, communications, and engines had all been calibrated with the finest technology available. Yet as it neared, the ship's systems began to fail one by one. Power grids fluctuated, shields faltered, navigation computers went dark. The crew shouted in terror, but no human weapon had fired. The humans had not struck, it was their presence, their understanding of space, of strategy, of consequences, that immobilized the ship. Panic became despair, despair became resignation. The aliens realized, with growing horror, that humanity's true strength was not in destruction, but in command. Council chambers across the galaxy erupted in argument and chaos. Leaders shouted, debated, and blamed one another. We underestimated them. We thought they were weak, backward, primitive. And now we see the cost. Voices rang out in multiple languages. Advisors proposed retreats, secret negotiations, even surrender, but every plan faltered under the weight of reality. The humans were beyond diplomacy, beyond intimidation, beyond any method the galaxy could devise. Humanity's return was not just a threat, it was a revelation. Inside the human vessel, crew members moved quietly, speaking in brief phrases and gestures. Every observation, every calculation, every measurement was noted. Humans did not need to destroy fleets or worlds to demonstrate supremacy. The galaxy's fear, its hesitation, its confusion, was a weapon far more potent than lasers, missiles, or plasma beams. Every alien that had once dismissed humanity now trembled under the weight of understanding. The humans were not cruel, they were precise, patient, and aware of the consequences of every action. And that awareness made them unstoppable. Even alien scientists and strategists, often removed from fear and emotion, admitted privately that nothing in their knowledge could account for humanity. Every calculation failed. Every simulation collapsed. Every projection had been flawed because humans did not conform to expected patterns, did not rely solely on predictable tactics, did not act in haste or out of fear. The humans had returned, and their power was not measured by the size of their fleets, but by the clarity of their minds, the precision of their strategy, and the patience of their will. The lost fleet, immobilized and drifting like ghosts, became a warning to the galaxy. Entire civilizations whispered among themselves that humanity's patience was infinite, that their strategy was flawless, and that any attempt to provoke, resist, or challenge them would be met not with anger, but with inevitable consequence. It was a terror unlike any other, a species that could destroy without attacking, that could control without firing, that could humble the proud without lifting a hand. In the human command chamber, Officers observed the galaxy's reactions as though they were studying a lesson in psychology. Every fear, every hesitation, every sign of desperation was catalogued. Humans understood not just technology and tactics, but the nature of civilizations, their pride, their arrogance, their weaknesses. And now, the galaxy itself was learning what the humans had known for centuries. True strength was patience, precision, intelligence, and moral clarity. For the alien fleet still attempting to maneuver, each failed action reinforced a harsh truth: humans did not need to destroy to prove superiority. Presence, observation, and understanding were sufficient. Every misstep by the aliens, every act of pride, every attempt at recklessness, only strengthened the humans' position. The galaxy had been shown the measure of humanity's power, and fear became absolute. And yet, the humans did not celebrate. There was no arrogance, no cruelty, no need to dominate for pleasure. Their mission was clear: the galaxy had forgotten them, and now it must understand. Every fleet immobilized, every council in chaos, every system trembling under the weight of recognition, was part of the lesson. The humans were patient, precise, inevitable. Their strength was not in destruction, but in command, in awareness, in the calm certainty that centuries of preparation had delivered. Across the void, alien fleets whispered to one another in terror. Even the bravest pilots admitted that their species had been unprepared for this return. Systems, tactics, pride, and courage, all had failed. Humanity had returned not to fight for survival, not to conquer, not to dominate, but to show, through calm observation and precise action, that true strength was far more than what the galaxy had ever imagined. The humans' vessel glided silently, majestic and serene, through the darkness of space. The lost fleet remained as a warning, immobilized, a monument to the futility of arrogance. And somewhere in the minds of every alien, from the highest counselor to the newest pilot, one truth became undeniable: humanity's return had not been violent yet, but it had already rewritten the rules. The galaxy had seen the true strength of humanity, and it trembled. And the humans, patient, methodical, unhurried, continued their silent watch. They had arrived to remind the universe of a lesson long forgotten: true strength is not in firepower alone, but in strategy, wisdom, and the quiet certainty of inevitability. And every being in the galaxy now understood, with fear and awe, that humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Galactic Council had never known fear like this. Never had the leaders of 1,000 civilizations sat in a single chamber and felt their pride crumble so completely. The reports had arrived hours earlier, though in reality time seemed meaningless. The lost fleet, immobilized without a single human shot, hung like a ghost in the void. Entire systems had paused in anticipation, waiting to see what humanity would do next. And still, the humans remained calm, observing, patient, unhurried. Their silence had become a weapon far deadlier than any laser or missile. Counselors argued endlessly, their voices rising and falling like crashing waves. "We must strike now," one shouted. "If we wait, they will destroy us all." Another countered, shaking with terror and disbelief, "Strike? At what? Their ship cannot be harmed. Every weapon we have, every tactic we know, is meaningless." And so the debate spiraled, the cacophony of fear and pride filling the chamber. No one listened, no one understood, and every moment wasted brought them closer to catastrophe. The human vessel continued its silent observation from the edge of the galaxy. To the humans, this was merely data: reaction times, hesitation, emotional responses, tendencies under stress. Every counselor's words, every fleet commander's panic, every whispered fear, every frantic plan was being catalogued, analyzed, and understood. Humans did not need to strike. They only needed to watch. The galaxy was unraveling itself under the weight of its own arrogance. Finally, a decision was made, or at least one that passed the majority vote. A massive coordinated strike would be launched, the largest in galactic history. Thousands of ships from multiple civilizations would move as one, overwhelming the human vessel with sheer numbers. The Council believed that quantity could compensate for the impossible. They believed that if they struck together, they could reclaim their pride, they could restore the illusion of control. But the humans had been waiting for this moment. As the fleets prepared, engineers and pilots worked feverishly. Systems were double-checked, weapons calibrated, shields reinforced. Officers barked orders over static-filled channels, attempting to organize perfection from chaos. But perfection was an illusion. The humans, silent and precise, had already anticipated every move. Every calculation, every strategy, every fleet formation had been predicted. And now, the galaxy was about to witness the price of underestimating them. The strike commenced. Ships moved in perfect formation, engines blazing, weapons primed. From distant planets and stations, citizens watched the massive assault with pride and hope. This was to be humanity's first real challenge. They believed that the humans could be confronted, defeated, or at least deterred. But the reality unfolded like a nightmare written in silence. The human vessel moved, not with the reckless speed of aggression, but with subtle adjustments that warped the very space around it. Shields bent light, engines shifted gravitational fields slightly, and every attacking ship found itself out of position before it could even fire. The fleets collided with invisible barriers, energy pulses scrambled communications, and systems overloaded in ways that defied logic. Commands were shouted, ignored by malfunctioning systems. Pilots fought to regain control, but nothing worked. Every move they made was already accounted for, already countered, already neutralized by beings they had once dismissed as insignificant. Panic erupted. Entire fleets hesitated, some turning back, others drifting helplessly in the void. Counselors screamed at one another, demanding explanations, demanding action, demanding results that could not exist. The humans had not fired a shot, had not directly engaged. And yet, the galaxy was paralyzed. The sheer scope of their power, combined with their patience and intelligence, had rendered the Council's greatest plan useless. Every decision made in arrogance, every fleet sent in pride, every underestimated calculation had led to this exact moment. Within the human vessel, the crew observed quietly, making minor adjustments, noting reactions, cataloging failures. They moved efficiently, communicating with subtle gestures and short phrases, calm and precise. To humans, this was strategy. To the galaxy, it was terror. No one had been destroyed, yet the psychological impact was catastrophic. The Council had believed that sheer force could overcome patience and intelligence. They had believed that quantity could overpower quality. And now, they realized their error too late. One fleet commander, isolated on a drifting ship now failing systems, muttered under his breath, We were fools. Every move we made, they knew. Every decision, too late. Engineers nodded silently, their faces pale, unable to repair the impossible failures that rippled across the armada. Across the galaxy, the same sentiment spread. The humans had not fought. The humans had only observed, and the cost of arrogance had never been so visible. The Council attempted emergency negotiations, desperate to avoid the inevitable. Messages were sent, pleas offered, assurances given. Humanity did not respond. Silence, the most terrifying force of all, answered the galaxy. Every paused fleet, every trembling hand on a console, every whispered fear aboard command bridges felt it. The humans had already judged them. Every civilization had been weighed, every decision recorded, every error noted. And the humans had not yet struck in earnest. The galaxy was learning a bitter, emotional truth. Power was not measured by weapons, fleets, or intimidation. It was measured by foresight, patience, understanding, and the ability to act decisively when the moment demanded it. The Council had assumed that their authority, their alliances, and their pride would shield them from consequence. They had assumed that the humans, long forgotten, would be predictable, vulnerable, and limited. And now, that assumption had failed them entirely. From the human vessel, subtle movements guided by observation continued. Systems remained stable, weapons offline, engines steady. The crew noted the hesitation in alien fleets, the panic in their communications, the unraveling of coordinated efforts. This was not victory by force. This was victory by understanding, by discipline, by intelligence, and the galaxy felt the weight of it in every trembling heartbeat across the void. By the time the Council realized their mistake, it was too late. Fleets faltered, alliances fractured, command structures collapsed under stress, and panic spread like wildfire. The humans had not yet attacked, had not yet demanded obedience, had not yet exercised the full extent of their power. And even in their restraint, the galaxy understood, with chilling clarity, that underestimating humanity had been its gravest error. The humans remained calm, methodical, unhurried, observing the chaos they had caused without lifting a finger in violence. Their strength lay not in aggression, but in inevitability, in patience, in intelligence. The Council's mistake had been believing that they could act before understanding the consequences, before acknowledging the humans' true capabilities. And the galaxy now knew that every choice made in ignorance, every act of arrogance, every hesitation, had been recorded, and would have consequences. As the Council dissolved into arguments, blame, and despair, the humans glided silently through the void. Their presence was unyielding, calm, inevitable. The galaxy had learned its lesson in fear, in awe, in humility. And yet, the humans had not yet spoken, not yet struck, not yet revealed the full depth of their power. All that had occurred, the lost fleets, the paralyzed systems, the shattered council, was only the beginning. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy understood, finally and painfully, that it had already lost the advantage. The galaxy trembled. Even planets far from the human vessel could feel the weight of its presence. The civilizations that had once scoffed at humanity now understood a truth too terrible to deny. Power did not reside in numbers, alliances, or weapons, but in intelligence, patience, and the unwavering will to act with precision. And humanity, silent and immovable, had all of these in abundance. The first world to fall was a minor colony, one that had refused to heed the warnings of nearby civilizations. Its defenses had been impressive on paper, a network of satellites, energy shields, and orbital fleets designed to repel any invader. But the humans did not attack in conventional ways. They did not fire weapons. They did not declare war. Instead, a pulse of control, subtle and unseen, swept across the colony's systems. Communications went dead. Power grids fluctuated uncontrollably. Defense satellites turned against their own ships in confusion. Panic spread faster than the light-speed signals could carry orders. Civilians screamed as engineers tried in vain to stabilize systems, but the humans were everywhere and nowhere at once. The planet's leaders watched helplessly from command stations, realizing in terror that their civilization's finest defenses had been neutralized before a single shot had been fired. The human strategy was surgical, precise, unstoppable. No lives were immediately lost, but the colony's infrastructure collapsed, their fleets were immobilized, and their pride shattered. Across the galaxy, other civilizations received the reports, and dread spread like wildfire. The humans had returned not to conquer in fury, but to reclaim control, and the consequences of ignoring them were already clear. As more worlds hesitated, the humans moved. Systems that had previously considered themselves untouchable now found themselves paralyzed, their fleets drifting like ghosts through space. Trade networks failed, communications went silent, and panic swept through every planet that had ignored the growing presence of humanity. Messages of surrender, of negotiation, of desperate pleas, were sent to the human vessel. And still, there was no reply. Silence, the most terrifying force in the galaxy, was humanity's weapon. World after world fell, not to firepower, but to precision. The humans did not destroy, not yet. They immobilized, incapacitated, and rendered their opponents powerless without taking lives. Their tactics were surgical, targeting only the essential systems, leaving infrastructure intact but wholly ineffective. Ships that once carried thousands of soldiers now floated uselessly in orbit. Weapons remained offline. Shields flickered and died. And in every corner of the galaxy, civilizations realized that the humans' power was absolute. They could strike anywhere, anytime, but they chose patience over aggression, intelligence over brute force, and observation over rash action. The galaxy began to fracture. Alliances crumbled under the weight of fear. Commands from distant leaders arrived too late to be implemented. Fleets refused to cooperate, unsure which side humanity would favor, or whether any side could survive its judgment. And yet, the humans did not need to favor or judge. Their presence alone was enough. Every hesitation, every act of pride, every miscalculation by alien leaders had been noted and catalogued. Humanity's strategy was unstoppable because it did not depend on violence, only inevitability. On board the human vessel, crew members moved quietly and methodically. Screens displayed star systems, fleets, and populations. Every reaction was studied, every decision analyzed, every failure recorded. They understood not just technology and tactics, but psychology, culture, and morality. The humans were teaching a lesson, not in hatred, but in consequence. Every world that had refused to heed their warnings was now facing the result of arrogance. The first destroyed fleets and paralyzed planets were enough to send shockwaves through neighboring systems. Panic spread in waves. Pilots who had once believed themselves skilled and invincible now doubted every calculation. Engineers who had designed shields and weapon systems found their work powerless. Leaders who had once considered themselves wise were forced to face their own misjudgments. Fear, awe, and desperation replaced pride, hope, and confidence. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy had no answers. Some colonies attempted resistance. Entire worlds mobilized their defenses, firing weapons at invisible targets, activating shields in panic, and launching fleets in desperation. Every attempt failed. Every calculation had been anticipated. Systems faltered at the exact moment the humans required, ships drifted helplessly as communications were cut, and the morale of entire populations crumbled. The humans had not yet killed anyone, but they had shown that resistance was meaningless, that underestimation carried consequences far greater than anticipated. In council chambers across the galaxy, leaders argued, pleaded, and accused one another. Alliances that had lasted for millennia fractured under pressure. Some councils considered surrender, while others debated desperate counterattacks that had no hope of success. The humans, calm and methodical aboard their vessel, had already calculated every move, and the galaxy could not hide its mistakes. Every hesitation, every misjudgment, every arrogant assumption was being recorded for future reckoning. Fear became widespread, yet or tempered it. Across star systems, soldiers, scientists, and civilians alike began to whisper the same thing. Humanity had returned not as a conqueror, not as a destroyer, but as a judge. Their power was measured not in destruction, but in discipline, foresight, and absolute control. Every fleet immobilized, every colony paralyzed, every council shattered. These were lessons, teaching the galaxy a truth too late. They had ignored humanity at their peril. Even the bravest individuals admitted to themselves, in secret, that no weapon they had ever designed, no fleet they had ever commanded, no strategy they had ever perfected, could overcome humans. Their strength was not in technology alone, it was in patience, precision, and the ability to act decisively when the moment demanded it. Every system that had fallen, every fleet that had been paralyzed, every world that had been silenced without a shot, was evidence of a species that had waited, prepared, and now returned to reclaim its place. And yet, the humans remained calm. There was no celebration, no cruelty, no triumph. Their mission was observation, assessment, and demonstration. Every fleet immobilized, every world fallen, every council in chaos, was a testament to their patient strategy. Humanity had returned to a galaxy that had forgotten them, and the consequences of neglect and arrogance were being laid bare. Across the void, alien fleets whispered in fear and awe. Civilians hid, leaders despaired, and scholars noted the impossible reality. Humans had returned, and resistance was already futile. Yet the humans had not killed, had not destroyed, had not even fired their weapons. They had only shown the galaxy the consequences of centuries of underestimation. In that silence, in that controlled calm, the galaxy understood a painful truth. No amount of pride, no alliance, no technology, no weapon, could ever undo the consequences of ignoring humanity. The fallen worlds, the lost fleets, and the immobilized colonies were a warning to all. The humans had returned, their strength absolute, their patience infinite, and their judgment inevitable. The void seemed heavier, darker, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble under the weight of humanity's presence. And still, the humans did not celebrate. They had arrived not to conquer, but to remind. They had returned not to destroy, but to reveal a truth the galaxy could no longer ignore. Every fleet immobilized, every colony silenced, every world brought to its knees was evidence of a power that could not be challenged. And the galaxy, trembling, realized that it had already lost the advantage, and that humanity's reckoning had only just begun. The galaxy had been silenced. After the fall of countless worlds, after fleets immobilized and colonies paralyzed, after councils broken by fear and doubt, the civilizations across the stars finally understood one undeniable truth: humans were no ordinary species. Yet, despite the terror and awe they inspired, the humans still had not struck with lethal force. Their calm presence, their observation, their precision, these had done more to humble the galaxy than any war or conquest ever could. And now, at last, they chose to speak. The human vessel decloaked above the largest of the remaining galactic capitals, a city-world that had once been proud, bustling, and untouchable. Its surface shimmered under millions of lights, unaware until now of how fragile its society truly was. From orbit, the humans did not launch attacks. There were no weapons flares. No destructive beams, no assaults. Instead, a single message radiated across every communication channel in every system. A calm, measured transmission in a voice that was neither threatening nor warm, but carried an authority that could not be denied. "Your arrogance has cost you everything you fail to see," the humans said. "For centuries, you ignored us, dismissed us, assumed we were weak, unworthy, insignificant. You exploited others, stole from those weaker than you, and built empires on pride and arrogance. And now you wonder why you tremble before us. Your choices have consequences, and you have already paid the price." Across the galaxy, leaders fell silent. Soldiers froze at their consoles. Citizens paused, staring at the blinking communication panels, unsure if they were hearing words or witnessing a judgment. The humans did not threaten further. They did not demand tribute or allegiance. They simply revealed the truth, clear and undeniable. The galaxy had been reckless, and the reckoning had come not in anger, but in patient observation and precise consequence. In the council chambers, elder leaders covered their faces with shaking hands. Advisors whispered apologies they could never deliver, promises they could never keep. For the first time, the galaxy felt the weight of its own arrogance laid bare. Entire histories, entire civilizations, entire generations had believed themselves untouchable, and yet here they were, facing the undeniable reality of a species they had ignored. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as the inevitable result of centuries of neglect, underestimation, and pride. The humans continued. "We have not acted with malice, but with clarity. Every fleet you dispatched, every weapon you fired, every plan you made, was observed, anticipated, and understood. No violence was necessary because your errors have already undone you. Your power was never measured by your numbers or your weapons, but by your wisdom. And wisdom you lacked. The galaxy is fractured, not by us, but by your own choices." Reports flooded in from countless systems. Pilots, engineers, citizens, scholars, all described the same emotional state, awe, fear, and humility in equal measure. For the first time, the galaxy truly understood humanity's method, humanity's patience, humanity's morality. They had returned not for revenge, not for conquest, but to teach a lesson in consequences, in foresight, in responsibility. And still, they spoke. "You have called yourselves rulers, gods of your own empires. You have believed yourselves unassailable, untouchable. And yet, your hubris blinded you. You did not prepare for our return, you did not learn, you did not respect life beyond your own species. And now, you face the truth. Your mistakes have cost you what you value most, control, pride, and certainty. You were given every opportunity to act differently, to change your path, and you refused. Your civilizations are now learning that patience, discipline, and wisdom are worth more than fleets, weapons, or arrogance." Across the galaxy, alien populations wept. Citizens clutched their families as they realized their leaders had miscalculated, had ignored warnings, had assumed dominance without understanding the true measure of power. Soldiers who had believed in their training, their ships, their strategies now faced the horrifying awareness that all of it had been meaningless against humans who combined intellect, patience, and moral clarity. Even allies of the humans, species who had cautiously observed but never challenged them, admitted privately that humanity's actions were beyond any prior understanding. Humans were not cruel, but they were absolute. Their patience had been infinite. Their precision had been flawless. Their judgment had been unavoidable. And their message, spoken now across every channel, every system, every council, was clear. The galaxy had failed to understand them, and the consequences were inevitable. The human vessel remained still, silent, and majestic above the planet. It radiated power without aggression, authority without threat, and clarity without judgment. Those who had survived the earlier strikes, who had watched their fleets paralyzed and worlds immobilized, felt the full weight of what had been revealed. Humanity had not yet struck with full force, had not yet destroyed, had not yet demanded submission. They had only returned, observed, and spoken the truth. And that truth was more terrifying than any weapon could ever be. In private communications between alien leaders, one common phrase emerged: "We thought we knew humans. We thought we understood them. We were wrong. Everything we believed is false." And it was true. Every expectation, every prediction, every calculation had failed against a species that had returned stronger, wiser, and more precise than any galaxy had imagined. The humans continued their message. You have seen our power, you have felt your vulnerability. It is not too late to change. Your survival depends not on weapons or alliances, but on humility, understanding, and the willingness to correct your mistakes. The galaxy has been given its warning. The choice now is yours. Change, or face the consequences that inevitability will bring. We will not forget, and we will not forgive negligence. The revelation was complete. Across the galaxy, beings fell silent in thought, in fear, in awe. They had seen the consequences of their arrogance, experienced the paralysis of their fleets, watched their worlds falter without human violence. And now they had heard the humans speak, not in anger, not in malice, not in rage, but in truth. Humanity had returned to teach a lesson, to reveal the consequences of pride, and to awaken the galaxy to a reality too long ignored. And still, the humans did not celebrate. There was no triumph, no pleasure, no mockery. They had returned, they had revealed, they had shown. The galaxy would remember this moment for generations, a turning point that would forever mark the return of a species it had long dismissed. And in that silence, in that awe, the galaxy understood fully, painfully, emotionally, that the humans had not only come back, they had returned to change everything. The galaxy had never been so quiet. Silence stretched across star systems like a heavy weight pressing down on every planet, every fleet, every council. After the fall of countless worlds, after the immobilization of entire fleets, after humanity's calm revelation of their judgment and power, every civilization now faced a choice unlike any it had ever encountered. The humans had returned not to destroy recklessly, not to conquer without reason, but to present the galaxy with a single, undeniable truth: change or face the consequences of inevitability. The Galactic Council gathered once more, though this time the members were pale, exhausted, and uncertain. Leaders who had once commanded fleets with pride now stared at communication panels that broadcast the human vessel in orbit above the capital world. Every advisor, every general, every counselor felt the crushing weight of accountability. There would be no hiding, no excuses, no denial. Humanity had returned to watch, to judge, to correct the arrogance of 1,000 civilizations. And now, they waited for the galaxy to make its choice. For decades, civilizations had acted with hubris, believing themselves untouchable, superior, and unchallengeable. But in the face of humans, every assumption had shattered. Fleets had been paralyzed, worlds had been immobilized, and councils had dissolved into chaos. Yet despite all of this, the humans had not struck with full force. They had shown restraint, precision, patience, and intelligence beyond comprehension. They had revealed themselves not as mere warriors, but as a force of moral and strategic inevitability. Now the galaxy's leaders had one final opportunity. They could choose humility, cooperation, and reform, acknowledging the mistakes of the past and accepting humanity's return not as conquerors, but as teachers and arbiters. Or they could cling to pride, arrogance, and denial, risking the total collapse of fleets, the fall of worlds, and the consequences that the humans had already proven were unavoidable. In council chambers, leaders whispered frantically. Messages were sent to allies, debates flared, accusations flew, and hope battled with fear. Some leaders argued that submission, at least temporary, might save what remained of their civilizations. Others, blinded by pride, declared that no species could dictate terms to them, no matter how powerful. The humans listened to it all, observing, cataloguing, analyzing. Their patience was infinite. Their judgment was absolute. And every hesitation, every miscalculation, every act of pride was noted. From orbit, the human vessel projected a message to all worlds, calm, measured, but filled with an authority that could not be denied. The galaxy has been given every opportunity to understand its errors. You have witnessed your fleets immobilized, your worlds paralyzed, your councils broken by fear and indecision. You have felt the consequences of arrogance, yet the choice remains yours. Change, cooperate, learn, and survive. Or cling to pride, resist, and face the inevitability you have ignored for centuries. We do not desire conquest. We do not desire war. We desire understanding. Yet understanding must be earned, and the galaxy has only one path to redemption. Across star systems, civilians, soldiers, and scholars alike listened to the message. They wept, they trembled, they realized for the first time the scale of humanity's power and the depth of its patience. Parents held their children close, whispering prayers of hope, while fleet commanders stared at blinking consoles, knowing that every decision now mattered, that every word and action could shape the survival of billions. Fear was tempered by awe. Despair was tempered by the realization that there was a path to redemption, if only the galaxy could choose wisely. Some planets moved first, sending fleets, resources, and messages to the human vessel in gestures of submission and cooperation. Leaders admitted mistakes, offered alliances, and vowed to reform their societies. Engineers shared technology for mutual understanding. Scientists proposed research collaborations. Every act of humility and acknowledgement of error was catalogued and observed by humans, who responded not with anger, but with quiet, methodical approval. Yet not all embraced this choice. Some stubborn civilizations refused to submit, clinging to pride and denial. Entire fleets mobilized, sending messages of defiance, weapons primed, shields active, declaring that they would resist humanity's presence at any cost. And the humans observed, unhurried, patient, inevitable. No shot had yet been fired, but the consequences of these decisions were already clear. Fleets that acted out of arrogance were immobilized before they could even engage. Worlds that resisted were rendered incapable of defense. Pride alone could not withstand the precise and measured judgment of humanity. Across the galaxy, whispers spread like wildfire. They do not fight as we expect. They do not strike as we fear. Yet they are unstoppable, inevitable, and absolute. Every hesitation, every mistake, every act of pride is already accounted for. We cannot oppose them. We cannot resist them. Only change can save us. Inside the human vessel, crew members continued their work with calm precision. Screens displayed the galaxy, highlighting every fleet, every planet, every decision. Observations, reactions, and calculations flowed into records that would guide future strategy if needed. The humans had not sought to destroy, yet the galaxy's fear was absolute. Their patience, their morality, and their understanding had proven far deadlier than any weapon. And now, the galaxy's survival rested on a single, critical choice: humility or pride. Those who chose wisely, who submitted, who acknowledged their arrogance and pledged reform, were allowed to retain autonomy, rebuild, and even cooperate with humanity. Those who clung to pride, who resisted, were immobilized, paralyzed, and rendered unable to act. Entire civilizations faced the consequences of centuries of misjudgment, of neglect, of arrogance. And still, the humans did not rejoice in their suffering. There was no cruelty, no mockery, no malice. There was only method, observation, and the calm authority of a species that had waited for this moment for generations. The last choice had been given. The galaxy had trembled, lost, and terrified. Some had chosen wisely. Others had chosen pride. And the humans, patient and precise, allowed the consequences to unfold naturally, demonstrating that their return was not merely a show of power, but a lesson in morality, wisdom, and inevitability. And so the galaxy, broken and humbled, began to change. Some civilizations rebuilt under guidance, learning restraint, discipline, and foresight. Others were left powerless, drifting like ghosts in space, forced to acknowledge that pride, arrogance, and ignorance could no longer survive. Humanity had returned not to conquer, not to destroy, but to offer a choice, a final choice, and the galaxy would remember it for all time. The human vessel glided silently above the capital world, a symbol of patience, precision, and inevitability. It had given the galaxy the last choice. It had given life to those willing to learn and delivered consequences to those who had refused. And in the vast silence of space, one truth became clear to every civilization, every commander, every citizen. Humanity had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy had changed forever. Centuries of arrogance, pride, and ignorance had been confronted, not by overwhelming violence, but by the calm, precise, and inevitable presence of humanity. Worlds that had once scoffed at the notion of human advancement now lay humbled, fleets immobilized or destroyed by mistakes made long before the humans returned. Every council, every leader, every civilization had faced the weight of consequences, and the final reckoning was upon them. Above the largest council world, the human vessel hovered silently, immense, unyielding, its surfaces reflecting the stars like liquid glass. From orbit, every being who had survived the previous trials could see the absolute perfection of its construction. It radiated power without aggression, authority without threat, and a presence that demanded recognition. Citizens and soldiers alike stared at it, or mixing with fear, knowing that their species' future hung in balance. The humans' message was broadcast once more, not as a threat, but as a truth. The reckoning has come, not because we sought war, but because you invited it through arrogance, through neglect, through pride. We have given opportunity after opportunity, warning after warning, for you to understand, to change, to prepare. Many have listened. Many have acted wisely. But some remain blinded by pride, unwilling to face reality. This is the final moment. The consequences of your choices will now be absolute. Across the galaxy, planets trembled. Fleets hesitated, frozen in uncertainty. Citizens clutched loved ones, whispering prayers they had never known they needed. Soldiers who had once believed in their own skill now stared at their consoles in disbelief. Every being alive felt the weight of inevitability pressing down on them. Humanity had returned not to conquer recklessly, not to annihilate blindly, but to demonstrate that wisdom, patience, and foresight were the ultimate weapons. And the galaxy had little time left to act before consequences became permanent. On worlds that had submitted, that had acknowledged their arrogance and pledged cooperation, a fragile hope blossomed. Engineers worked alongside humans to restore fleets and stabilize infrastructure. Scholars exchanged knowledge, learning not just technology but strategy, patience, and moral insight. Diplomats witnessed for the first time a species that wielded power without cruelty, that demanded obedience not through fear but through clarity, patience, and precision. On these worlds, humanity was not conqueror but teacher, showing the galaxy a path forward it had never known. But on worlds that refused to submit, that clung to pride, that rejected wisdom, the reckoning was immediate and absolute. Entire fleets drifted helplessly in space, systems failing in sequence as human precision neutralized every attempt at resistance. Cities fell silent, shields powerless, weapons inert. Leaders who had once commanded empires now sat frozen, unable to act, unable to escape, their arrogance laid bare for all to witness. Citizens, innocent of their leaders' pride, wept as they realized the full measure of consequence. Humans had given time, observation, warnings, and yet the price of ignoring them had been paid in full. Inside the human vessel, crew members moved with quiet efficiency. Observers catalogued every reaction, every decision, every miscalculation. The humans had not sought to destroy unnecessarily, but the galaxy had chosen its path through pride and fear. Every immobilized fleet, every fallen world, every council broken by indecision was a testament to the inevitability of consequence. The humans acted not in cruelty, but in precision and justice, demonstrating the ultimate principle: every action has a cost, and every choice matters. From orbit, the humans projected one final message across the galaxy, calm and measured, yet carrying the weight of absolute authority. The reckoning is complete. Those who chose humility, wisdom, and cooperation will survive, thrive, and rebuild. Those who clung to pride, arrogance, and denial will learn their lesson in the silence of consequence. Humanity has returned not to punish, but to reveal the truth. Strength is measured not in weapons, not in fleets, not in fear, but in foresight, patience, and the clarity to act when the moment demands it. Remember this. Remember it for all time. Change or perish. The choice has been yours to make, and the consequences are now unavoidable. Across the galaxy, civilizations absorbed the weight of these words. Soldiers lowered weapons, counselors bowed their heads, and citizens wept openly, acknowledging that humanity had not only returned but had judged without malice, acted without haste, and taught a lesson that would echo through generations. Even those worlds that had resisted now understood the inevitability of human precision, patience, and morality. They had faced the consequences of centuries of arrogance, and they had survived only to witness the absolute strength of a species they had long ignored. The fallen fleets drifted as ghostly monuments, reminders of pride's fragility and humanity's patience. Immobilized worlds whispered stories of a reckoning that had arrived without warning, without attack, but with absolute certainty. The galaxy had seen what it meant to underestimate a species that measured power not by destruction, but by wisdom, foresight, and moral clarity. Humanity had returned to the stars, and the lesson had been learned: nothing would ever be the same again. And still, the humans did not celebrate. There was no joy in destruction, no pride in victory, no malice in consequence. They had returned to restore balance, to teach patience, to demonstrate that wisdom and clarity were the ultimate forms of power. The galaxy, trembling, humbled, and forever changed, now understood that humans had arrived not just to fight, not just to return, but to shape the future. Their presence was a reminder, a lesson, and a warning. The reckoning was complete, and the measure of humanity was absolute. Above the stars, the human vessel glided silently, unhurried, unstoppable, precise. The galaxy had been tested, judged, and awakened. Humanity had returned, not for conquest, but for legacy, leaving behind a universe that would remember their power, patience, and moral authority for all time. The reckoning was done, the lessons delivered, and the galaxy, humbled and awed, would never again forget the species that had returned to claim its rightful place, not through violence, but through inevitability.